What's happening, Chargers fans? Welcome to the second last regular season episode of 2023 with the Thunder Down Under. Andy Prophet here, joined by Alistair Lloyd and Jack Reed. Happy New Year's to you both, gentlemen, and to all our listeners. Many happy returns for the coming of 2024. How are we doing today, fellas?
I'm all right. Pretty good. Nice to be back in the box seat. Happy New Year to everyone listening. Happy New Year to you too as well. Yeah, can't wait to get back into it.
What did you get up to for New Year's, mate?
I was in bed by about 9 o'clock. So, yeah, I was sleeping. That's what I was doing.
The dad life is in full effect.
It's very, very relaxed here. We're just by the ocean, or by the river, I should say. Have a nice view. We saw the fireworks, the family fireworks at 9 o'clock, and yeah, into bed ASAP.
And that'll do for the big man. Soon enough.
Hey, and a lot of TDU family, becoming new dads. We've got to acknowledge Kyle's, but recently become a new dad as well to beautiful baby Isabella.
Absolutely. Congratulations to Kyle and his wife, Sana. Fantastic news for their new little family. It's all happening.
We were a little more charged up, weren't we, Andy, for our New Year's fest? Chef, why don't you tell the listeners what you prepared at short order for a glorious feast?
Yeah, cooked a bit of food, some lovely pork shoulder, some prawns, fed Al and his wife and my partner. Perfect little feast to finish off the year. Had some cocktails and some beers, and then Lloyd and Lloyd and Mrs. Lloyd turned out to be quite competitive at the old board games as the clock hit 12. So that was very interesting. Well, guys, like I said, second to last show for the season, but not the end of our calendar. Do not fear changing the guard ahead of the team in what will be another interesting off-season for the Chargers. We're going to spend a little bit of time over the next couple of shows taking a walk down memory lane, looking at the Telesco tenure, where things went right and where they faltered. So today we'll glaze over the game at Mile High from New Year's Eve and dive into TT's imprint on the Bolts offense. So let's get into it. Los Angeles Chargers 9, Denver Broncos 16. With the drama that had unfolded in recent weeks between Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, and the Donkeys, and Wilson's ultimate benching, the Eastern Stick versus Jarrett Stidham storyline wasn't promising to be a battle of the greats. For the most part, there weren't too many surprises. With an inspired showing against the playoff-bound Bills the week before under interim head coach Giff Smith, the Chargers fans were led to believe in a spirited effort once more. At times early, especially led by Derwin James, the effort and intensity looked to follow on, but standard few moments of lapse, ultimately costing the Bolts in a low-scoring affair. Massive congratulations to Khalil Mack, registering his 100th career sack and becoming the 42nd player in league history to do so. Alas, missed tackles. Once more, the brutal slap in the face, allowing Lil Jordan Humphrey to take the ball 54 yards to the house for the sole touchdown of the game, leaving multiple Chargers players in his wake. Not even the perfect boot of Cameron Dicker could help us. He had a field goal blocked from 50, and it just was a little bit of a flat way for us watching it on the 1st of January to kick off the new year with a belter hangover. Jack, good to have you back, mate. Penny for your thoughts.
Oh, to be honest, I think I see more interesting poo in Molly's nappies than the games I'm currently watching with the Chargers. So,
Jesus.
yeah.
Gee whiz.
Not really, not particularly invigorated. I thought I would see a little bit more of Diane Henley, but he only played 8 or 10 snaps, which is a bit disappointing. Andy, you said that the Khalil Mack was lovely to see, his 16th and highest ever sack total in a season. And it was really good to see Jordan McFadden in place of Zion Johnson actually had a half-decent game. Stick was kept fairly clean, I thought. The play design was interesting. There was a bit of a fake punt that completely capitulated into nothing. It was just, at the end of the day, it's Eastern
Absolute
Stick.
dog's balls, wasn't it?
It's Eastern Stick. He's baby poo, essentially. Or baby poo is more interesting than him. I don't mind Callum Moore's play calling, but geez, the cattle that you've got out there are just absolutely shocking. So I watched this game half on my child, half on the screen. I don't really have much else to say other than that, but maybe, Alistair, you've got some interesting things to go?
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if that's that interesting. I'm still stuck in the mode. I'm not going data yet. I'll leave data alone. I'll just go. What allegory can I bring into the discussion this week? Can we go
I've
like
liked
13th
these since I've been
century
gone. They've been really good.
Iranian poetry, perhaps Rumi or something? No, absolutely
Okay,
not.
all right.
What I will do though is I'll channel my AFL team, Collingwood, who have become very successful and won the premiership in our competition. And the head coach of my team likes to say, to beat Collingwood, you have to play the minutes. You need to play the minutes, all 4 quarters. And I feel like the story of the Staley tenure and this team is if you play the minutes against the Chargers, you'll win, because the Chargers will they'll fumble the ball. It might be Austin Eckler. There'll be a blown coverage. There will be a botched fake punt. There'll be multiple missed tackles. There'll be a 4th down PI in the end zone just when you've got a chance to win. So that's kind of the challenge for the team as I see it. If at the moment, as an opposition coach, that if you play the minutes against the Chargers, they will self-immolate. And I think that comes down to the difference between bad teams and good teams. So that's kind of my headline thing. We've got to get out of this zone where we find ways to beat ourselves, because it's been a regular occurrence all through this year, but it's a new year, and hopefully with new coaching and new ideas, we won't see the same thing.
I think you've summarized it perfectly. Play the minutes against the Chargers, you'll get the result. And because we just cannot play consistent enough football across 4 15-minute quarters. Personally, not really looking for... wasn't looking for too much exciting to come of it. Wasn't expecting much. We got Brendan Jaimez and, as you said, Jack, Jordan McFadden in at left guard, replacing Zion Johnson. So Easton Stick, of course, Palmer out, Keenan out, Mike Williams out. We're running bulk targets to Keel and Doss and Alex Erickson. And I tell you what, for a wide receiver 5, in the absence of any kind of return to form from Jalen Guyton, amidst all the other injuries to the top guys, Alex Erickson's been pretty serviceable and had some great catches. That said, look, it's we're flaying a dead horse to a degree. You'd like to see a little bit more. I'm kind of disappointed that we didn't see all that much more from the sort of fringe or depth pieces, key position pieces. Quinton Johnson had one deep shot target in the first quarter, and then we didn't see him until 5 minutes into the fourth. And then
Patrick Surtain took him to town. He just gone, I'm big and I'm long. I'm going to follow you around, try to beat press man coverage. And he couldn't, could he?
Couldn't even get schemed open. It's a bit sort of disappointing when a lot of your, as the offensive coordinator and the play caller, a lot of, how it shows you developing young players when you can't even work with the guy to get him touches beyond the point where Denver had kind of packed it in. Disappointing stuff. Diane Henley's a huge one. Nick Neiman in there for about 70% of the snaps, and only really saw one drive, amassed 4 tackles or a part of, and looked good. The one time that we decide to go... The one time we decide to go for that trick play on 4th down, it's an absolute shit show. And you've got to wonder at 4th and 1, doesn't the offense have a better...
Not a trick play, is it?
Yeah.
Like, it's tricky.
Well, we're tricking ourselves.
It's tricky if it's 4th and 12 on your own 27. I've got a view. If you're going to call out that stuff, call it when no one's expecting it. If it's
or the offense runs that play.
Exactly. Like, you're not tricking anyone on a 4th and 1 at your own 45. As a special teams on defense, you'd say, all right, guys, just be ready for like some kind of fake here. And they were ready.
Oh, weren't they? And it looked like he'd bobbled the direct snap and then ran away from where the protection was. Very
bobbled
interesting.
Snap came out like a lightning bolt, though. It had a bit of heat on it. It looked like he was completely unready. Just going back to what you said about QJ and Surtain, I mean, I will keep defending QJ because I do think he's got the physical ability to be a number 1 receiver. He just wasn't drafted to be a number 1 receiver. You got to think in all the... And people might come for me for defending him. He's not good enough, but the poor guy has been asked to do things that he probably wasn't thinking about in camp. And don't disregard, 6, 7, 8 weeks when Justin is focused on Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, all these other guys, and he's just like, oh, I don't necessarily need to do my thing. Surtain wore him like a glove, and so Surtain should. Surtain should dominate a first-year wide receiver. Wouldn't matter if it was Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers in there. I still think Surtain would have killed us. So, you know what? I've seen enough over the last couple of weeks as well. I haven't had a chance to say it on the podcast that there's enough there from QJ, especially when he gets the ball after touch. I still think he's got the physicality to go with NFL secondary players. I just hope that Kellen Moore, if it is him calling the plays, whoever's calling the plays next year, puts a little bit more time into him in the preseason. So, yeah, QJ, even though, people are crying out, oh, he's not doing well, why isn't he getting bulk targets? It's like, well, you don't want to, as you said, Alistair or Andy, flog a dead horse. So I thought QJ was okay.
I don't disagree in the sense that by the end of the year, he's going to have, 450, 500 receiving yards. And if you compare that to Mike Williams, the first year he was drafted, it's not like clear that the guy's a bust. It's just the expectations were so high this year because everyone thought it was Super Bowl or bust. But I'm with you. I'm not writing the guy off.
And everyone else got injured as well. We demanded a huge workload out of him, almost from week 3 onwards.
And like the expectation, the expectation was not on him though. The expectation was on the offense. So that's the thing, I guess. Yeah.
Part of the ship, part of the crew.
Yeah.
I still would like to see him higher on the targets list. So even against the Broncos, he had less targets than Everett, who had 9, Erickson, who had 9, Doss, who had 8, and QJ got the 5. It's still not what you want to see, but he was, like you said, Jack, he was against an all-pro corner. So I guess you just go elsewhere. Easton Stick goes elsewhere. It makes sense. Hopefully better things next year for him too.
Yeah. Pretty decent protection from the O-line. Stick was kept clean. There was a few designed runs on 3rd and long that just kind of looked like Easton Stick was a kid at a supermarket who'd just been caught putting chocolate bars down his pants by a store clerk and just cowered on the ground many moments before actual contact came to him.
Yeah. Speaking from experience, are you, mate?
I never got caught. Defense on the whole, probably not super horrible. Obviously, the standard kind of follies that always plague us, which those missed tackles. I thought for the amount that Matlock and Tito played, they didn't grade particularly well, but in the absence of SJD, the Broncos' run game was about as efficient as ours.
They flashed
on paper a better running unit with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. So not horrible, but they played against a very well drilled offensive line as well. So credit there. I think a third of the targets from Stidham went towards Michael Davis and Essang Bassi. Gave up 147 of 224 yards, 8 catches on them. Not great. Jasir Taylor's still out of favour. What's going on there? Is Dean Leonard not 100% match fit to return corner snaps? It's a real concern when you're still paying. You're going to be paying, 16 million plus for a guy that isn't even on the team next year. That dead cap going to JC Jackson doesn't say a whole lot about your depth there when at least one of those aforementioned guys in Michael Davis wouldn't really expect, based on this year's form, to be a Charger next year either.
No, Sean Payton was smart in that game too.
There's not many.
No, not many at all. Sean Payton, I thought in this game, and one of the key statistical differences, because everything was very similar in terms of yardage, yards per play, it was that third down efficiency where Chargers go 2 of 11 and the Broncos go 7 of 17. Because Peyton goes, we know on 3rd and 4th and short, we can run the ball because their defensive tackle group is not great at stopping the run. We'll either go QB keepers and run it or run up the middle with Javonte, keep the chains moving. On our side of the ball, we can't run on short yardage situations. So we end up punting. And I thought Peyton just thought, you know what, if we're conservative, run the ball, hit some field goals, we'll win this game against the Chargers. And
So he should
what
though.
happened.
He's an experienced coach, and he's coaching up against Giff Smith and half an actual football team. So
Yeah.
you know, it's it is what it is. And I think Peyton coached fine. I mean, to be honest, if I was a Broncos fan, I'd be going, why didn't we absolutely obliterate these guys? Yeah. If Russell Wilson's playing, I think we probably lose this game by 2 touchdowns at least. Stidham was okay, but defense, yeah, Derwin James again. It's nice to see him playing a little bit more freely. I thought he was. It was good to see him there. But other than that, I mean, Tooley is kind of. I think every game I've watched Tooley, sort of the impact plays that he seems to have are becoming more and more spaced out. He still flashes like any good prospect would, but he needs another sort of good preseason. You know, it'd be interesting to see what the defensive scheme will be next year for him to thrive.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah, that sort of rookie season fatigue that, you know, you're not necessarily seeing out of the likes of Will McDonald or any of those other sort of high-end guys. But, you know, college season's 10, 14 games, 15 games if you're super lucky. And, you know, playing 17 with a high snap, high rep count takes its toll. But look, still been pretty impressed. Don't know about him mic'd up against the Bills. That was a bit how you going. Very, very interesting gear.
Get
But
off
look,
my field.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Okay.
Anything further from you guys? Jack, have you got a teachable moment for us in your return?
I do. It's not about this game at all, but I've been thinking of my time away and what's happened with the Staley ejection and the Telesco ejection. This is none other, I can't call it anything else than a true sliding doors moment. This is a chance for the Chargers to think about their past 15 years, to reflect on who they are and perhaps what they represent and how they run their business, how they run their family, because I still see a world where we have whoever coach we hire, whether it's an experienced one or a junior one, we're back here in 3 years' time. And the experienced coach we've hired lost it and said, you know what, I quit, I can't work with you. Or the inexperienced coach just hasn't had the support from an organizational level and we're back in the doldrums. So sliding moments we've seen in our fandom, you know, arguably 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Let's call Phillip Rivers a Hall of Fame quarterback. Justin Herbert's not there yet. When will they look themselves in the mirror? And this is the spanner I'm looking directly at you, John and Dean. When will you actually look at yourselves in the mirror and say, my God, I'm wasting talent here. I'm absolutely wasting talent. So my teachable moment is please, 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 let's make sure the door that we go through is going to bring some success. Maybe not in the first year, but there needs to be some key indicators in the next 24 months that this team is going somewhere with Justin Herbert. If not, geez, I think the outlook looks pretty grim. So class dismissed.
Yeah, well
Nice
said.
one.
Including for our show.
It's a fair point. How can you be sure that you're gonna be successful? You know, when I mean, look, we'll get into at least the last 10 years of how the offense has been crafted around these stud quarterbacks, where there were moments of potential greatness and where there were just, you know, repeat offenses by the GM in terms of, you know, draft philosophies, the way he sort of managed bringing free agents into the building, hanging on to them, or, you know, deciding to let other guys go. It's going to be a fun one when it rolls into the defense as well, because when you look at the names on the list and the financials, it's actually quite well spread out across both sides of the ball, which makes you just sort of think, how bad was he at his job? He, you know, made some good decisions that worked, but I tell you what, there's one column when you're looking at hits and misses. There's one column that's a lot fuller than the other for mine. Al, do you want to kick us off, mate? Any way you like.
Well, just before we do, Andy, I wanted to kind of give a refrain on what Jack said about the teachable moment, because it made me think that I see a difference between the kind of the official statements of the Spanai about wanting to change, make things better, new outlooks and perspectives. But since Staley got fired, the utilisation of Dayon Henley doesn't tell me a lot's changed. he's still in the pecking order behind Nick Neiman. I know he's had a groin injury, apparently, according to Coach Smith, but they didn't do a lot to change that. Isaiah Spiller's still barely touching the ball. Same with Kelly. They're giving all their carries to Eckler, who's probably not going to be on the team next year. Is that forward thinking and changing your approach to things? Not really. Jordan McFadden, who I'll ask you in a sec, Jack, how you thought he played because you're our O-line guy, but he only came into the game because Zion Johnson was out. Last week against the Bills, he wasn't in the game. Another missed opportunity. So I'm seeing a divide between the words and the action still, which means I'm going to need to be convinced to see real change, to think there's real change, because I've seen more of the same really since Staley got fired. What do you think? What do you think about that, Jack?
I would agree. And the fact that Max Duggan isn't even getting a shot. I mean, I'd love to see the guy just sling a few balls. I mean, we know Easton Stick, well, he's a known commodity. Is he going to be there next year? God, he hasn't. I would hope not. In terms of the organizational structure since Staley has gone, in a time of crisis, you do look for continuity in key spots. You don't know what the locker room's like. Austin Eckler is a large voice in that locker room, and to upset him might upset the apple cart. So, and is there going to be any love lost if you don't give Spiller? Because I guess next year you can say with Spiller, hey, mate, you're going to get some time into you because clearly Austin Eckler's not here. Eckler might believe that, he wants to hit targets. He wants to try and get his bonuses. So in that, I can kind of understand. And Giff Smith being very much a Spanos guy as well. He's been around the organization for a while. But in terms of what McFadden showed, I put it back to the way the team has kind of seemed to be run over the last number of years, which is all individuals. So pay individuals big money. And you know what? Our O-line is these 5 guys. We don't even have schemes or even a philosophy to rotate people through during a big offensive series, in and out. So the defense definitely did on that defensive line, but it seems to me that there's this individualistic philosophical approach which runs from Dean, which goes to John, which Tom Telesco was. And Tom Telesco, to be the youngest GM ever, you have to have this individual drive and a way that you see the world that I think is not necessarily team oriented. And I'll dig into that a little later when we talk about, I guess, Tom Telesco's tenure. But I still see that on the field. I still see individuals performing. I haven't seen a team. And I think that's where Staley really lacked because he was still a defensive coordinator. He didn't have the experience at the head coach level. So I see individuals playing football, and that's been a tenet of Staley's tenure. And that is perhaps because we've had a lack of experience at the helm and also at the GM level as well. Because Tom Telesco, yes, he's got 11 years experience, but it was his first job.
Well, maybe one other question before speaking about Tom Telesco's 11-year reign of terror. Because based on what you just said, we've got to acknowledge, and we'll get into this in future shows, but all of the talk, the Chargers fans are behind Jim Harbaugh, who just had a stirring success in the Rose Bowl. Michigan are now in the final. We know that Michigan have offered him a 10-year deal, $125 million, which he's sitting on. The reports are he's keen to return to the NFL, and I dare say Michigan having all this success makes it more likely that he returns. What are some initial thoughts from both of you guys? Maybe, Jack, you can give the first response, but Jim Harbaugh, is he the kind of breath of fresh air the team needs to hit on some of those things you said, Jack, about not being so individualistic?
Just beware. Just have an eye on both sides. Bill Walsh would always say, protect your blind side. Chargers fans, Harbaugh is not going to solve everything. Neither is Ben Johnson. These guys are not panacea. They're not the medicine that all of a sudden they get hired and the team's fixed. No. There's probably months, if not years, of restructure and understanding from a general manager, from an HR level, from a scouting, from everything. It's just beware. Yes, he looks sexy. Yes, he's winning. And we looked at, Alistair, you shared the other brother in the locker room when the Ravens had their dominating win this week. And that was a leader of men, willing to put himself out there, be a little bit goofy. Brendan was always a little bit steely. He was quite serious. just be wary. Okay, everyone's shouting their house down for Harbaugh. I get it, but just understand what he will bring. That is also the, I guess, not, I won't say negative, but is also the baggage that he brings as well.
And by that you mean like his attitude, and he's a feather, he's a cage shaker, things like that. I kind of think that on the whole, from including Brandon Staley for sure, the last three coaches and Tom Telesco it has been it's been a soft mentality and a real cushion coddle kind of way of, we want to win, but it's okay if you don't. That's the kind of mentality that I've thought. Whereas when you look at Harbaugh, who's had a winning record and turned teams around, what he's done at Stanford, he came back in, took the Niners to a Super Bowl. Michigan have been underachievers for a long time, and two college football semi-finals, and now finally a college football finals berth in the last 3 years. There's he goes, let's go, get on my back and let's go, and people believe in him. I think there's so much talk, there's no do in the Chargers organization, and that stems from, that's why I'm still not sure when the Spanai say we want a different view, we want to move in a different way. I won't believe it until I see it, because from them down to Telesco to the coaches, it has just been talk without any kind of action. And I think Harbaugh is the kind of guy that does what he says and implements that, and he gets people to believe in that. I don't care about his, maybe ugly personality at times. If you guys out there haven't seen, it's worthwhile checking out the tantrum compilation. He's an absolute child on the sideline. The carry-on is things I have never seen before. He gets flagged for unsportsmanship.
We've been mates for years. You've seen it. You've seen the histrionics watching games.
Yeah. That's all right. We're not paid millions of dollars to represent ourselves and the team. We sit on a couch and hurt each other. This guy is just passion. He bleeds it. And I don't know. I think maybe it's not the best look and it's not the best kind of example, but it gets results. And I think enough's enough with the Chargers being like a pretty, keeping it clean, winning. I don't want to say winning fairly, because I don't think he's, a cheat, even aside from all the signal stealing stuff. Might have dug him in a hole a little bit there, but I think enough's enough with us being like a pretty boy kind of team. Let's get dirty and win some football. Actually get what we...
Yeah. Will the organisation, though, the Spanai, want someone like that? I think they can easily say, yes, we're going to hire you, but there's still about me that 18, 20 months in, Harbaugh's trying to make hard calls, hold people to account. That's the biggest thing, is holding people to account. Okay, you're a first-round draft pick, but you're not good enough, so you're sitting on the bench. That's just the way it goes.
John Spanos, you're not allowed to wear that backwards cap anymore. Inside the room, out you go. Yep.
Yeah.
So
and get out of the frat. Quit doing cake stands. You're 50 years old, dude.
That's the accountability, and for that to actually take, I would want to see a key marker of success or a key indicator of things changing, that halfway through the season, if Harbaugh is coaching next year, that there are media reports of players being unsettled. There are media reports of coaches being unsettled. These guys that have been around the organization saying, oh, it's not a good environment, because then he's trying to make change. I know that doesn't look great, and the reports on that have been negative, but at least it'll mean rages are starting to cattle, cages are starting to rattle. There we go. Been a while since I've been back in the chair.
Well, he's gonna be pretty hands on in terms of personnel and things like that, and have a big input in. The GM is not going to puppet him. It's going to be far more the other way around, unlike what it's been over the 3 coaching cycles that Telesco's managed. A lot of it is Spanos tells Telesco, Telesco then says, and you've got McCoy, Lynn, and Brandon Staley who just go, yep, I will work with that. Not, can we do it, meet me halfway. Harbaugh will go, I'll get like an equal or an even softer GM that he can kind of push around, And, if it doesn't work, it's going to be a colossal explosion for the organization. But what you're saying about if you get a first round pick who's spending time on the sideline because he's not playing good enough, that's self reflection and self accountability on Harbaugh's side. Not something that we've seen. It's been the complete opposite. If it hasn't worked, Telesco will. It's been continuously pushed to make it work in years past. So I don't mind that. I don't mind admitting you get it wrong because, hell, we're going to see a big roster turnover that, over the next couple of years. There's no way around that financially. So maybe it will be a good thing. I don't know. What I'm more concerned about is not necessarily the personality issues, is more so the Spanos opening up their pockets, because there's a few other teams looking for a head coach this year. The Raiders, their owner's a rich gambler. You've got the drink chucker in Carolina, David Tepper, just got fined $300,000 for throwing a drink at Jacksonville fans. Incredible. Josh Harris, wealthy owner at the Redskins. So there's going to be competition, and if
money in the swear jar for that, Andy.
What did I say?
Commanders.
Oh, yeah, righto. Yes, apologies. Got me off guard there. The Commanders. There's going to be teams that want to get the services of a guy like Harbaugh who can turn their franchise around. So if Dean Spanos wants to be taken seriously, maybe he's got to be one of those guys. I'm just not sure that he's willing to do that. So we'll see.
What do you think?
On the other
Alistair?
side... Oh, sorry. Go.
Yeah, I think change is good, and the natural inclination after you've had a few yes men or people without the successful pedigree, I'd be well on board with throwing money at a proven coach at multiple levels who used to play quarterback for the Chargers. He'd know enough about how the organization runs. Apparently, the Spanai family have been in conversation with him at different points throughout the year. I'd be excited by it. I'm with you. I'm a bit kind of traumatized by how much of a failure the Staley thing has been. So it will be a wait and see. But if it does blow up in a year and a half under Jim Harbaugh, God, I don't know what happens. Maybe we become the Delaware Chargers or something, and we move to some other time, because you're not going to survive in LA if you don't win. But at least it would be a commitment to trying to win, and he'll cost a pretty penny. As you said, Andy, there's going to be some competition for his services. So, yeah, that was a good starting
The
point.
London, England Chargers.
Oh,
That's what we'd
yeah.
be. Would be the first franchise.
The
in
mighty
London.
rocking horses of London town. Yeah. It'll be interesting nonetheless. On the other side, you've got a proven play caller who I guess we've been bitten by a couple of times, at least mainly with Brandon in Ben Johnson. Unsure what he can do with a whole team. Al, I spoke to you about this when we were watching on New Year's Day with the Broncos games. You don't actually know what the guy can do with a whole organization. That sort of really seems to be Dan Campbell's shtick, not tied to any particular scheme or any offensive sort of mindset. He just kind of barks at them, and they go, "Yeah, let's be blue collar. Let's that's that ugly football." And then Ben Johnson's sitting there with his computer and his abacus, and he's just he makes it sexy. And that partnership works. Will Ben Johnson's, foray into head coaching translate the same way? Will he pick up? He's a well-spoken guy. Dan Campbell has his moments of being well-spoken. Sometimes he sounds like he's chewing foil. So I don't really know how that will work, but I feel like we're just now kind of thrice bitten. It's not really something, and I think it might actually be scaring some Chargers fans off as well with the prospect of having the next hotshot coordinator, play caller.
And how can you know? Team. How can you know, right? Like there is the je ne sais quoi of High as the head coach, because it's very different calling the plays versus leading an entire organization and preparing practice schedules and nutrition, or it's a completely different role. All you can do is kind of look at their body of work. Ben Johnson's got a bit more experience than Staley, so it's not the complete kind of supernova rise to the top. He's been in the NFL for at least 10 years, Miami with Joe Philbin all the way through, so maybe he's seen a bit more, some places that didn't work, people getting fired, a place like Detroit where they built it up from the ground. But you just never know. I do think, though, for the people who want Ben Johnson, it is a bit of a cheat code in the modern NFL. It gives you more breathing space to grow into your head coaching role if you're an offensive play caller who's really damn good.
Yeah.
Like we've seen with McDaniel and McVay and LaFleur, if you're a good play caller, that's at least a start, but it doesn't mean you're going to be good at the other stuff, like you've said.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, the experience and the exposure that he's had in past lives that he can take with him. So, yeah, who knows? Interesting to see. Do we want to talk at all about the prospect, if Harbaugh falls through? Dan Quinn, I think we briefly touched on him a couple of weeks ago. Another potential coming back. Maybe marry him up again with Kellen Moore. The the Cowboys of LA. Yeah, he got Atlanta to a Super Bowl. Yeah,
for me, there's like Harbaugh, Johnson, and then a bit of a gap.
Yeah.
And you're
At
looking
least
at,
like
Flores and Quinn and
Belichick.
Bieniemy and Belichick. Okay, what do you think about Belichick, Jack?
Oh, it wouldn't. If that happens, I think I might I don't know what I'd do. The amount of hatred that Bill Belichick has for our organization. I think the Chargers are up there with one of his teams that he likes to beat the most, up there with the Jets and the Browns and all those. But no, I think he's too far gone. Old Bill, and LA is LA's a bright-eyed, starry city, very different from the working people of New England and that kind of culture there. So I think it takes someone a little bit more glitzy and glamorous. Belichick, I think, is also a defensive-minded coach. So you'd have to get a coordinator that would want to work under Bill Belichick and, inherently conservative.
Josh McDaniels?
McDaniels, O'Brien, these guys, yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Got some openings to host this podcast if you'd like, guys. If it comes to that.
That would be poetic
see me
justice,
getting pumped up every day.
It would, wouldn't it?
That's probably the worst way it could go, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Telesco.
Okay.
What do you reckon,
Where
do you want
tried to do this 15 minutes ago. Sorry, I derailed it.
No, that's fine. You've derailed it well. As long as you can come up with something good now.
I want to hark back to something Jack said about Telesco being kind of made a GM at a really young age. So necessarily you rely on your one kind of experience. And for him, it was Bill Polian and the Colts and the way they did things. And I think over his tenure, he's really failed to keep up with the times.
Yeah.
He's kind of gone back to what he knew and what he believed in. And to me, that was a lot of focus on football players rather than athletes. And you can see his philosophy. If you look at relative athletic score, one of the kind of metrics you look at draft time, that's clearly not been a consistent focus for the Chargers over his 11 years. There was a brief stint in 2018 and 2019 when Gus Bradley was the defensive coordinator. And in that scheme, because it's a very simple scheme, you draft some athletes and you play fast. There was a little area where we kind of averaged above 8 out of 10 for drafting athletic rookies. But most of the time, it has clearly just not been a priority. So I don't think he ever really adjusted that. And to his detriment, as the league has kind of decided, hey, with all these wacky schemes and great college players, we want some outstanding athletes out there. To me, that's kind of at least one thing that he was a bit stuck in the mud philosophically. If we make it like a conversation about offensive prospects, which is what we're doing this afternoon, I think his kind of tenure is really summed up in that move to trade up for Melvin Gordon in 2015. If you look at that move, San Francisco ended up getting 3 picks to come down 2 spots. And when we went from 17 to 15 to get Melvin Gordon, they went from 15 to 17 and got Arik Armstead, who's just been good for years for them. They got Blake Bell, who's now with the Chiefs as a tight end. They got another defensive end called Ronald Blair. He was there for 4 years, had about 15 sacks. So it's just this kind of understanding. Telesco had this thing where he was really keen. It's almost like there was a prize where he goes, we want that player. And unfortunately, the 2 positions he kind of drafted more than any other was outside of wide receiver. It was guard, a very low positional value spot, and running back. trading up for
linebacker.
Melvin Gordon.
Linebacker as
And
well.
linebacker too. So it's like he didn't quite get it. He didn't get positional value. He didn't trade down one time in 11 years. Imagine not trading down one time in 11 years. The New Orleans Saints are the only other team who's done that. Go, Jack.
Well, you know why? Smells like shit, looks like shit, feels like shit, tastes like shit. It is shit. And Tom Telesco's tenure, when you actually break it down, on that fact alone, Alistair, that no one wanted to trade with him. And I think that says something. If you, and this is just me pontificating and hypothesizing, but if you look at one area of strength of Tom Telesco's was putting together pretty good deals for players. They're pretty good organizational good deals. You know, there are ripcords and things, which shows me that he's pretty tight with money and he's fairly strong-handed and he doesn't really like to give too much. You transfer that to the world of GMs. You're a young guy that's come up. You're a whippersnapper. You haven't had the chance those 10 years, 15 years to build those connections with your colleagues. A lot of the time, colleagues, or should I say, what do you call some peers? There we go. You know, you think about when you rise, if you're 32 and you're working as an assistant GM, you've got maybe 50 or 60 other guys that are around your age that are slowly going up that age bracket with you. So when you turn mid 40s, 50s, you go, hey, oh, that's right. Remember when we worked together, blah, 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 blah. It seems to me that he might have just gone into this world of GMing and no one wanted a bar of him because he's just not a peer. They just didn't really know him. And
same thing with Staley, right? Back. When he's trying to build coordinators and find guys to work for him. It's a downside of getting a very prominent position at a young age.
And I just think the fact that they have never traded back, we've never seemed to, even in this draft when we went QJ, when everyone was, I think most pundits would say, hey, trade back in the second round, get some value. He never has been able to find it. And the depth on this team has been an issue for years.
Yeah, see, I'm intrigued because I would have thought that if people, failed to respect him, they would have tried to rob him, essentially. So when he's offering things, they were like, okay, if he truly believes there was not a valid trade partner, he's either stubborn or just wasn't calling the right people. But if there's a professional mismatch, as you suggest, which I'm not discounting at all, Jack, but I think that there'd be a lot more kind of savvier older guys who go, all right, let's take this whippersnapper to the cleaners. And maybe that's kind of what happened when he traded up, because there were 4 instances of trading up, just hemorrhaging 4th round picks for as Al said, this fixation on a name, on a story. Just about Manti Te'o is a huge one. Like, poor guy, let's draft him, let's give him a job. But mine, really poor assessment of offensive line talent, as you said, and just overdoing it as well, Al. The theme of the coupon god, he did a really good job. I don't think it's all just lashing Tom Telesco. There were really good instances, not so much in the draft, but like in free agency, of bringing in guys on cheap 1 year deals, seeing a little bit of production, and then almost throwing the house at them. And it was like, as soon as they got that money, things just turned to absolute crap. Joe Barksdale's an example of that. Chad Reinhardt had a good first year when he was brought in 2013 or 14, and then, got 3 or 4 years extended after that. Sort of never really saw the same output. Trying to make splashes, seeing one guy have an anomaly kind of year, and then bringing him in on a multi-year deal. Travis Benjamin is a perfect example of that. 1 year he had more than, I think, 18 catches. Chargers bring him in 4 years for 20-something million, and we all remember the muff punt safety. It's just like classic disaster sort of things. So I don't know, maybe there's a fair bit of like too big for his boots. He just was really stuck to his guns. I felt a long way. Kind of got better at it, but he got himself into so much cap deficit early on when those big deals failed. The Dunlap extension. Sorry, Orlando Franklin was the big one. cut 2 years after a 5-year deal was struck. There was just a lot of dead money going on, and it's now come almost full circle to the point now where he's backloaded contracts and hasn't been able to do the right thing, and now, he can walk out of the burning building, as we've sort of joked about. But yeah, a lot of desperate stuff. Unfortunate. Not finding it, just not being able to develop enough depth for a team that just needed balance from the Phillip Rivers days to Justin Herbert. The struggles that the team has now with just not being able to put out a balanced offense.
If you're going to give him credit, I think one thing is borne out. Like, it's ridiculous to get given 11 years as a GM making the playoffs 3 times. Let's just say that. He got an extraordinary tenure for his lack of on-field success.
Longest leash I've seen.
Crazy. But one thing I will say, I think he acknowledged and got better at drafting or dealing with offensive linemen. So if you look at his early years, he was actually drafting guys with really low athleticism. DJ Fluker, Chris Watt didn't work. Max Turk didn't work. Forrest Lamp and Dan Feeney didn't work. And then I think he said, stuff this. If we're going to have a center, we need to hit free agency, Mike Pouncey, Corey Linsley. So I reckon tick for acknowledging your weaknesses and getting an established professional. And then if you look at, Balaga, well, injury set him aside, but same kind of thing. And then if you look at like his most recent offensive lineman, he went from drafting non-athletes who are busts to very good athletes. Pipkins, Slater, who's 9.71 out of 10 RAS. And Zion Johnson, who's 9.55 out of 10. So jury's out on him, but I at least saw an evolution across 11 years of getting better at something that was a weakness at the start of his tenure.
I absolutely agree. I should have signposted the poor assessment of offensive line talent by saying that, from the start it was pretty ugly. Max Turk, Feeney, Lamp, Pipkins was starting to become, DJ Fluker was absolutely in that mold. Chris Watt, and then you sort of Pipkins had started to get better. But, we've just neglected some things, and a rotational piece or a depth piece in the tackle spot has ended up being a mainstay starter. And there's, injuries have played a big part in that. With Pouncey missed a lot of football, Brian Balaga missed a lot, and now Corey Linsley has sort of fallen into that category, except he's paddocks above any of the other guys. What were we going to say, Jack?
Just another element of Tom Telesco being left behind. And I can't remember when the press conference was, but I believe it was a number of years ago when he was asked by a journalist, do you believe in windows? Herbert's got a couple of years left on his rookie deal. Do you think you're going to go for one? And he openly said, I don't believe in windows. I don't believe in quarterback windows. And from that moment on, that has just pissed me off. And if that doesn't encapsulate Tom Telesco's tenure as a GM of the Chargers, I don't know what will, because he did it with, one of the best quarterbacks I can ever remember watching in Phillip Rivers, and he never was able to build a team that complemented Phil. Like, he never put the offensive line time that he has for Justin Herbert in Phil. I don't know what the relationship with Phillip and Tom Telesco was like. Who knows? I mean, Phillip didn't leave the organization on best terms, but how can you, in today's modern game, how can you not leverage rookie deals, especially quarterback ones, in today's financial market and the way the salary cap works? I just think it's moronic and negligent, dare I say, to link it the fact that he got 11 years. And good riddance.
Mm-hmm. I've got that view as well, because I'll link this, listeners. Brad Spielberger from PFF put together a kind of a reflective piece on his 11-year tenure. And based on PFF's metrics, they say the Chargers were the 4th worst drafting team over the 2013 to 2022 period, 10 years. So a lot of people will give Telesco credit and say when he had an early pick, he hit with Herbert or Mike Williams, or he hit with Keenan. You're going to have some hits over 11 years. This team is bereft of a good roster because PFF would say guys aren't getting second contracts. You were the fourth worst team at drafting over this 10-year period. So I think it's generous to say he was a middling GM. I think that bottom 5, bottom 10 is a lot closer to a fair assessment of him, which is why the team has just not made the playoffs more than 3 times, despite having franchise quarterback play.
Yep. Yeah. It's easy to point out the shining lights, the Boses and the Verrett to a degree, but it's so few and far between that it's actually worked for an extended period of time. And what that ends, and when you trade away your mid-round picks and you don't move back and accumulate picks, you end up having to spend more money during free agency. And as he has done, especially in his sort of earlier 4 years, is either miss out on signing guys to longer contracts, for example, Adrian Phillips, and overpaying guys on that second contract. Brandon Flowers is one of them. I don't want to get too much into the defensive players. I want to leave a little bit of meat on the bone for next week. King Dunlap, 4 years, $28 million in 2015. That stuff really, really hurts when the guy doesn't stay with the team for the duration of that contract. And let's say 5 out of your 7 players either aren't on the roster the following season or don't even make the team that year. You just don't develop any kind of depth or continuity with the playing group. It is like a colossal revolving door.
And Andy, I think if I were to draw Telesco's tenure and the Chargers, I guess, success over the last number of years, and we go on this podcast, especially you and I, Andy, about coherency and the lack of it, is if I was to draw a graph, it would be, up and then absolutely bottom out, and then up and bottom out, not a gradual climb towards building something. And when you're going up and down, 12 and 5, all of a sudden then we're 5 and we're going up and down. There's no consistency in philosophy or organize. And I get it. Coaches change and schemes change. But, the Howie Rosemans of the world don't do that. Howie Roseman goes, this is the Eagles football team. Doesn't matter. Peterson won us a Super Bowl. We've got Sirianni here. Hasn't really changed the way I draft or build teams, and they're still successful. So this constant up and down is just, as I reckon Phillip Rivers' experience would be the most frustrating thing ever. And I think Justin Herbert's probably starting to feel a little bit of that too.
He can't draft running backs for shit. That's something I've picked up as well. Like, again, he drafts guys who aren't athletic enough to transition from college to NFL, and he'll go on things like wiggle and vision. That's okay, but when you draft Justin Jackson, Larry Roundtree, Josh Kelly, they're just Isaiah Spiller. The argument is at the next level they're just a guy because they can't explode. So, I don't know. Offensive, pretty grim. Do we give him credit for quarterback, guys? Do we give him credit for Rivers, contract extension of Rivers? Should they have moved on from Rivers earlier and got Deshaun Watson or Mahomes when people wanted to move on from Rivers? Justin Herbert. How do you evaluate how he's handled quarterback?
Luck. He inherited a Hall of Fame quarterback. He didn't do anything to help Phillip, as I alluded to earlier. Justin Herbert wasn't a home run pick. He definitely had some stones to take him where he did because the pundits didn't believe Justin Herbert was of the quality of maybe a top 10. He was a decent quarterback. But a lot of that is luck. And the same thing you said, you throw enough picks out there, one is going to hit. I don't think he would have kept his job if Justin Herbert wasn't drafted. I think we'd have seen a new GM probably 2 or 3 years ago by now. So I think he's done a better job in supporting Justin Herbert with the drafting of guards and offensive tackles, as we've noted. He hasn't helped the running back at all. He's tried to help him with wide receivers with Mike Williams. He's kept Keenan Allen along. Josh Palmer's a decent wide receiver, and the jury's out on QJ. But I think he's tried. But handling the quarterback situation, I call it mainly just a little bit of luck. He would probably disagree with that, I'm sure, but we'd see.
No, you're right, Jack. Andy, what do you think about wide receiver? Because I don't know. I see that they love these tall guys, and you end up with a lot of tall guys. Look, over his 11 years, what do you think of his handling of that position?
Well, I think a lot of it's highlighted by the prototypical kind of size that he goes after, and you had to be a Charger fan for all of 5 minutes to know that we needed speed and wanted speed and twitch and variance on that kind of
That's the
mold,
key.
and not veering away from, it's that mentality of like a guy, and he can go up and make a catch and he can outbody a guy, but you don't always play against the same kind of receivers and defenders and cornerbacks, and just feels like it's a tunnel vision kind of thing, and we don't have the breadth of body types to be able to execute everything as we should, and it just makes the offense one dimensional. And when you're not drafting a good offensive line and a good running back core, and you've got one kind or one and a half kinds of receivers, then yeah, you're really shooting your quarterback in the foot, because you're not allowing. It doesn't matter who your offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, Kellen Moore. I stand by that. I thought there wasn't a huge discrepancy between Lombardi and Kellen Moore this year, because I just don't feel like Kellen Moore has any kind of different pieces. He's got a different set of ideas, but there's not really the pieces to be able to execute what he wants. So that's been a massive hindrance on the progression of the offense, and you're really just you're just relying on Herbert to try and bail you out and be a superhero, and it's. I think if Herbert wasn't such a kind of nice guy, you'd hear a bit of lip, and I'm sure there's an element of frustration bubbling away under the surface. Maybe he's happy that the Telesco's gone, and there's a new breath of fresh air in the philosophy behind bringing different guys in.
It's interesting, Andy. Maybe that's a little bit of his outdated way of operating. He was trying to find the Julio Jones, the Megatron, these guys who, 10, 15 years ago were the premier wide receivers of the NFL. These are the guys that had 10,000 yards, but now it's the Tyreek Hills, it's the Jalen Waddles, it's the smaller, faster guys. Mike Evans has his place, don't get me wrong. He's having a fantastic year this year. But
fantastic career, sorry.
Yeah, incredible career.
Such an understated career.
1,000 yards every year, I think he's gotten. So
yeah, something stupid, and a Super Bowl. Like he'll be enshrined one day. Just you watch. Yeah, but the way he's not even trying to do too much different with how he's brought in free agent wide receivers as well. Stevie Johnson, Jacoby Jones, golly, Travis Benjamin, as we said. Kind of using those guys for sure as return guys, but it's so yuck.
It's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. I don't know how you stand there as a football team this year with Keenan, Mike, and Palmer and think, hey, QJ's the guy we'll take. Because what he has that's different, he does bring yards after catch, which was a need last year, but we did not have a single wide receiver who is shifty. That's the word you used, Andy, and that's perfect. And you watch Zay Flowers, what he did against the Dolphins on the weekend. That's the element that you're missing, the ability to start, run a pivot route. It takes big guys longer to create separation. So you play defenses know they can kind of creep up a little bit. They can play press. It's going to take them longer to get downfield, and it stultifies your offense. And it doesn't matter if you're Kellen Moore with these good play designs and you look to push it downfield. If you don't have those outlets that aren't Gerald Everett, you're going to get stuck in third and long. And that's what we're going to see. And it's seen. And it's going to take a couple drafts at least to fix that, because we don't really have any of those guys on the team. Darius Davis is he's deep threat, but he's not shifty. He's kind of an undrafted type wide receiver anyway. So something to focus on.
Agreed. Yeah. Good piece if he was undrafted. 4th round pick. Don't know. Hasn't really been they haven't even really tried to get him into the offense as such. Jaden Reed. would have been great. I think what, fourth or fifth round pick to the Packers,
And
killing
then
it.
Jack could have bought that Guernsey with Jay Reid on the back, Chargers.
Would have been sick.
Would have been sweet.
There's going to be plenty more to talk about, and I'm sure next week we'll have when we're talking about how the landscape of the defense over the last 10 years has been kind of molded. There'll be crossover. So if you want to keep your guns in your holster for another week, if you're happy with that, fellas, we can just look forward to a delightful battle between the Chargers and the Chiefs. Rooting for a win, I'm hoping a top 5 pick out of this one.
Yeah, I think at this point, rooting for a loss,
Get the
actually.
body bags out, I think.
Yeah.
Get the body bags
Yeah,
out.
I'm
'Cause
just
I reckon
pulling
there
the
are going to be
wool.
a few
I'm pulling-
leaving.
And do
Yeah.
Chiefs have anything to play for? They might be locked into their spot. It might be rest all the starters kind of game. Not sure. but it
Yeah, I
might be,
don't
not
know
sure.
off the top of my head what the record is between... I think they've got a better record than whoever will win the AFC South. And are they 10-6? Maybe if
Yeah,
if
I
the
think
Bills,
they can't
I
get
think
home
if the,
field advantage, so I reckon they rest everyone. And it would just be a Chiefs
Maybe
thing
you're
to
right.
do to make sure they lose that game, so the Chargers pick at 8 or 9 instead
Yeah.
of 5. Yep, fucking bastards.
and then we can all get excited about drafting Joe Alt at tackle instead of a Malik Neighbours or Marv Harrison Jr. Lots of fun to look forward to. Don't have too many shows left to go in the season 23, so we'll make the most of it. Guys, take care. I hope the start to 2024 has been great for you all. We look forward to another journey with you ahead. Till then, we'll see you next time on Thunder Down Under. Cheerio.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Stop it.
Rivers back pedals looking, firing. He's got Floyd turning. Got it! Zigzag, 10, 5, high step, touchdown! San Diego!
Good night! Good night to all!